An expanding diagonal is a rare structure, never preferred unless all of the other stuff fails, but it is an important structure to know about. There's two different types of expanding diagonals. We have an expanding diagonal where we have a 5-wave impulsive move in a wave 1, in a wave 3 and in a wave 5 with 3-wave corrective structures in 2 and 4, which have to be family of the zigzag. And then we have expanding diagonals where all of the waves are family of the zigzag. So all of the waves have to be a simple, a double or a triple zigzag. Now this scenario over here where we have an impulse, 3-wave impulse, 3-wave impulse can only be part of a leading expanding diagonal, while the scenario here where all of the waves are zigzag structures can be a leading diagonal structure as well as an ending diagonal structure. And a leading diagonal appears in wave 1 or wave A, and an ending expanding diagonal can appear in a wave C or a wave 5. A few things that are good to know is that a wave 4 has to be longer in price compared to your wave 2 in an expanding diagonal. Wave 3 has to be shorter than wave 5, so 5 has to be longer than wave 3. However, wave 3 does not have to be longer than wave 1 following the newest rules of Elliott Wave International. It is still not common that wave 3 is shorter than wave 1 in an expanding diagonal. Most commonly it will still be longer, but at least it is not a rule that it has to be longer. It's more like a guideline that usually wave 3 is longer than 1, but it is not a must. It is not a hard rule. Also in an expanding diagonal, overlap between your wave 1 and your wave 4 is most common, and generally that is also what you like to see, but it is not a rule, it's also a guideline. So even if wave 4 is not overlapping with your wave 1, it is not an invalidation for an expanding diagonal. But then again, this pattern by itself is already a very rare pattern, and not seeing overlap between a 1 and 4 is also rare. By far most common to see overlap between your wave 1 and your wave 4 in an expanding diagonal. When we look at the fibs, then the common target area for a wave 2 taken from the low to the high of wave 1 is between the golden pocket and the 886. The 0.5 is a little less common, and anything above the 0.5 is generally quite rare for a wave 2 in an expanding diagonal. In wave 4, your common target is the same, taken from the low of 2 to the high of 3. You want a wave 4 to be deep as well, generally between the golden pocket 886. Anything above the 0.5 here would be a rare occasion, right? That's definitely not common. And the target area for your wave 5 is between the 1 and the 1.618 most commonly, because wave 5 has to be longer than wave 3. So you want it to be longer than the 1-to-1 as a minimum, taken from the low to the high of 3 to the low of wave 4. A wave 5, however, can extend quite far. It can even go to the 2 as well, but most commonly you'll find that a wave 5 ends between the 1 and the 1.618 trend-based fib extension. If we then look at a fib time, then wave 2 versus wave 1 is the same fib time as always. So we take a fib time from the low to the high of 1, we double click over here, toggle on the wave 2 fib times here, and preferably it ends after the 382 at least and before the 4 and the 5. Anything over here between the 382 and the 3 is perfectly fine, even up to the 4, but it starts to be quite long, of course. Then wave 3 versus wave 1 is usually longer, and that is of course because the wave 3 generally is a bigger structure. That is most common, at least, that wave 3 is a longer structure than wave 1. Not a rule but a guideline. But if we then take the fib time and we take it from the low of our wave 1 to the high of 1 to the low of wave 2, and we toggle on the 1-to-1, then preferably your wave 3 is ending after the 1-to-1 fib time, as well as, by the way, the 1-to-1 trend-based fib extension, right? It is not a rule but a guideline, but it is preferred that your wave 3 is a little bit longer than your wave 1, so moving above the 1-to-1 over there. With regards to fib time, wave 4 versus wave 2 is usually longer because wave 4 in an expanding diagonal should be a bigger structure than a wave 2. So naturally, the probabilities therefore increase that a wave 4 takes more time than a wave 2. So we take a fib time from the start to the end of 2 to the end of wave 3. Preferably your wave 4 is ending after the 1-to-1. And wave 5 versus wave 3 usually longer as well, as of course in an expanding diagonal, wave 5 has to be longer than wave 3. So naturally, because the move is bigger, it is longer. Now, wave 5 can be very spiky, can be very impulsive, a bit like a parabolic blow-off type of top, right? But naturally, or at least commonly, it is longer than your wave 3. So take a Fib time from the low to the high of 3 to the low of your wave 4, and then preferably it ends after the 1-to-1, as most commonly a wave 5 is a bigger structure than a wave 3. Again, those are Fib time wise just guidelines, right? Those are not rules. Your wave 5 can be shorter than your wave 3 in time. That's no problem. It's just, of course, probability wise, generally those structures are longer. With regards to the volume in expanding diagonals, the volume does not follow a specific pattern, like it's always decreasing, it's always increasing. However, most commonly it will increase because of your wave 3 and your wave 5 being bigger structures. So you have your wave 1 to the upside in both of the diagonals, but your wave 3 is commonly, of course, longer than your wave 1. Not a rule, but a guideline. So naturally, you would expect the volume to be a little bit higher in your wave 3. Same with the wave 5, where the wave 5 is bigger than your wave 3, so naturally the volume tends to be higher in your wave 5. A side note specifically for the expanding diagonal where all of the structures are zigzags is that in a zigzag the wave C can end on high amounts of volume. It is actually quite common that it does. So pay attention to the second leg towards the upside, because usually that is where the volume is, and in a wave 2 and a wave 4, in both of the cases, volume generally moves towards the downside as corrective structures of the 1, 3, 5, also over here in the expanding diagonal, all being zigzags. Generally your 2 and 4 have a lower amount of volume. When we then take a look at the volume profile, you would expect a move up in wave 1 on the volume, then a retracement in 2, volume going down, a push up again in 3, retracement in 4, and a push again to the upside in wave 5, where there is the possibility for the volume to increase as price is moving to the upside because the structures are getting bigger. It is not a rule, it is a guideline, because the volume profile can also be relatively flat and horizontal and messy, because it's usually quite messy structures on the chart. Also because, as mentioned, they're quite rare, so not easy to detect. They're usually the latest or one of the latest scenarios that you're going to be thinking of, and the volume is not always very clear with these type of structures. Now, this is everything that you have to know about an expanding diagonal, either a leading expanding diagonal or an ending expanding diagonal. If you have any questions about this pattern, make sure to send me a message in the group.